Welcome to Man in America, a voice of reason in a world gone mad. I'm your host, Seth Holhouse. Something that is near and dear to me is the media. Obviously, as a podcaster, I believe in helping disseminate the truth, and not just what I think the truth is, but giving you both sides of things and just trusting that as a human being with a God-given soul, that you have the discernment to decide what you think is right. And my job is, to give my opinions and try to frame them as my opinions. I try to be very careful about telling you something and saying this is absolute fact if it's just my opinion, but also just, being confident that if I give you multiple sides of the story and question things enough, that you can also come to your own understanding, because you're smart, you have your own intuition, and I believe in that. And beyond the podcast, I worked for the Epoch Times from 2008 for almost a decade, and saw how important the media was in helping to not just shape the narrative, but at least give people the information they need to understand the narrative. And so if you combine the role of the media, but also with something I'm very passionate about, which is having a foothold in your local community and not just relying on DC or the kabuki theater of the politicians to actually enact change, these are things that are very near and dear to me. And so my guest today is a guy named Monty Bennett, and he is a businessman from Dallas that saw what was happening in this country and just decided to take on what he could within his own realm. So he's not someone that's running to be a governor or something like that, or a congressman, but he's someone that put his time and his money and really his name on the line to fight the battle at the local level. And what's interesting, because he's in a city like Dallas, which has become in many ways a very blue foothold and a lot of ways a stranglehold, oftentimes backed by Soros money and a lot of corrupted money, it's interesting to hear his story about what it's like fighting on that local level. But he also started his own media company, which interestingly enough has grown much larger than the local legacy media. And so this is just going to be a story of a man, your everyday guy in America, just doing what he can within his own control to try to help change the direction of this country and to try to affect change, which I think is really important, because the more and more I witness what's happening in this country and what's happening in DC, the more I've realized that we have to focus on what we can control, which is going to be our own community, our own environment, our own local town hall, our own local politicians. These are things that we actually can control. And I do believe that part of the PSYOP has been to convince all of us to focus on things that we can't control. So we're arguing over something happening in the Middle East while ignoring what's happening on the streets of our own city. So this is going to be a great interview. And these are the kinds of interviews I enjoy because there's no agenda behind it. There's no kind of a motive. It's just an honest, sincere discussion between two people about how they can try to help change the direction of this country, which I'm not sure about you, but I believe is heading in a very, very precarious direction. Now, before we jump into that, just have a quick announcement I've made only once on one of the previous shows, is that as you've probably heard me talk about, if you've listened to the show before, I've got a book coming out called Prep Like Noah. So preparedness is something that is very, very important to me, because even though Trump's in, I'm still seeing the advancement of a digital AI technocracy. I'm seeing a lot of things that are still very concerning, not to mention continued weather manipulation, flooding, all kinds of disasters. I think it's so important now more than ever to be doing what we can, especially within our own local regions, of being prepared. Now, as the process has kind of moved forward with writing this book, one thing I've come to believe very strongly is that something that's so important for us is to build our community, right? Because I was big, you could call me a doomsday prepper a couple of years ago, think, okay, I got to stock up on ammunition, on food, got to defend my family, if I shoot my neighbor, if he's going to come try to steal my food, if he's starving. And it was a very fear-based place. So what I've come to now is that the most important part of being prepared is actually our community. And so as part of what we're doing as the Prep Like Noah is that we're actually launching a community. We're building a community, an online community, with the purpose of being able to create online connections that lead to offline connections. So if you, for instance, are getting into solar and you want to put solar on your house, but you need some help, I want to be able to help you find someone that has the same values as you that can help you and guide you and walk you through and answer some questions. Or if you're doing gardening or any of the sort, or say you want to have an expert come on that's an expert in, say, survival medicine, that can answer your questions. And so what we're doing is we're building a community that's going to have all of this stuff: tutorials, guides, courses for learning, but most importantly, opportunities to connect with like-minded people. And so right now we're at the very beginning stage of this, and we decided not to just build this big thing and say, okay, it's ready, come in. So what we're looking for is we're looking for people that will want to become the pillars of this community. So if you are passionate about preparedness, whether it is sewing, right? So a very important skill a lot of us have lost, or canning food, or raising animals, or off-grid living, or any of these different things that tie into this, or you're someone that just wants to get closer to that. If you're passionate about it and you want to become what we call one of the pillars of this community, and you want to come help us build the community, and what we mean by that is doing weekly calls together with me and the other pillars of the community to figure out how we can better build this community to offer to people. That if you're interested in that, shoot us an email. So email community@preplikenoah.com. So again, just community@preplikenoah.com. We're opening up 75 spots for people that want to become these community pillars, people that want to be involved in helping us to build this, because I'm very, very passionate about this project, actually extremely passionate. So if you want to be involved with that on the ground level and help and contribute, and yes, you'll get lifetime free access to the community as well. If that's something you care about, shoot us an email. It's community@preplikenoah.com, and we'll get you tell us a little bit about yourself. We'll put you on a list, and we're going to be vetting people, but we really want to build the initial foundation of this community, of these pillars of the community, that people that really believe in this and want to help with this. So if that's something you care about, shoot us an email, community@preplikenoah.com. Just introduce yourself and I'll put you on a list and we'll be in touch. All right, so please now enjoy this interview with Monty Bennett. You've probably heard me talk about the importance of being prepared, and that includes having access to life-saving medicine when you need it. That's why I want to tell you about ReliableMedicines.com. They offer affordable, prescription-based meds like ivermectin, fenbendazole, hydroxychloroquine, essential antibiotics, and more, all shipped directly to your door quickly and discreetly. There's no runaround, no waiting in line, no begging your doctor. Shipping is fast, usually 7 to 15 days, and their support team is available 24/7 if you need anything. I've used them myself, and I can tell you, this is the kind of resource every family should have on hand. And just for my listeners and viewers, you can use the promo code MIA15 at checkout to get 15% off your order. So head over to ReliableMedicines.com or just click the link in the description and stock up on life-saving medications while you still can. Again, that's ReliableMedicines.com using the promo code MIA15. Mr. Monty Bennett, it's great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
You bet.
So it's interesting. So we met through a friend, and I wasn't familiar with you, but I kind of looked into your background. It's like, oh, you're right in the same page as me. You're not only you're a businessman, you've got a lot of business ventures, but you're a strong believer in the role of the media, the role of having kind of having a say in crafting the narrative. But you're also something that's very unique, because while I've lived in the big blue cities before, and I'm out in the country now because I won't touch the big cities. You're in Dallas, and so you're, I would say, on one of the front lines of what would have historically been a strong stronghold for conservative values that has been, whether it's through Soros funded people getting in or whatnot. It's really the front line. So I guess I'll let you just give a quick introduction to yourself and a little bit of your background to help frame our discussion today.
Sure. Well, I don't know where to begin. I'm in the hotel business, and I've been in it since I got out of hotel school. I went to Cornell undergrad and Cornell Business School, Cornell undergrad hotel program, and then business school. And I have an identical twin brother, and he went to full-time ministry, and he does that in New York City now. And I went to work with my father in the hotel business. I branched off about 20 years ago, and I've been in that business for many, many years. The past 5 years have been rough since COVID, and it still hasn't recovered. But along the way, I've really come to appreciate how important the media is and how important it is for, I don't know, what's the right word? Ordinary citizens, people in business, people having their own business or people just working for a business to be involved in their communities and to be involved by running for office, supporting candidates, by even not only supporting candidates financially, but supporting them through media, and how important the media is. And in Dallas and so many cities, the media had gone so far left that they've become irrelevant. And so one thing that I've started here about 4 or 5 years ago is the Dallas Express, which is a newspaper here in town. And I'm proud to say that while our competitor here in town, the Dallas Morning News, has been around for 120 years, they have something like 60 to 70,000 subscribers. We've got 270,000 subscribers.
Wow.
We're free and they're not. But the point is that we reach far, far more people, and their influence has waned to the point that they just accept an offer to be bought out by a New York hedge fund, and their local influence is falling off. And it really has a lot to do with the fact that they just don't produce the news anymore. It's just a far left propaganda outlet, and we try to produce the news. And anyway, we've gotten a lot of attention, and our numbers have been growing like crazy. So I'm very happy about that. And then I'm involved in other kind of community type projects as well.
Well, it's interesting that you went into media, because as we were talking about before we started recording, in 2008, when I graduated from college, I moved straight to New York City at that time, because I, through a circuit happenstance, while in college, I met this Chinese guy that I found out was a brilliant, smart, kind guy that I found out had spent 8 years in a labor camp in China because he was a Falun Gong practitioner. And so while he was being tortured, literally tortured with cattle prods and all kinds of things, and working 14, 16, 18 hours a day, producing things that you go buy in Walmart today, it's crazy, but it's easy to believe these days. I left a liberal arts school with this mission to try to expose communism. And so I went straight into the media, and at that time worked for this little startup called the Epoch Times. And that was how I initially got started, and I think started to understand how important the media was, because at that time, what we saw, the Epoch Times was one of it was actually the only publication that really broke the story of live organ harvesting in China. And even with that, we saw that the other major media, whether it was New York Times or Washington Post or CNN or MSNBC, they didn't touch that story because of the influence from the Chinese Communist Party. And that was one of these realizations of thinking, wow, that's amazing that you think that America is, land of the free, yet the media is in many ways is being controlled by a foreign communist superpower. And that the media wasn't even talking about the fact that this country that we're doing, over time, trillions of dollars in business with and are so involved with, is literally harvesting the organs, state-run organ harvesting operation, murdering people and selling organs to foreigners coming in. And that was this big kind of about face of, this is why the media is so important. And then obviously I eventually started a podcast, and I think podcast in a lot of ways is now the tip of the spear in the media. But it's great to meet people that have a foothold in the media and understand how important the media is, because for a lot of people, they will only believe something if the local paper prints it. And if the local paper doesn't say it's true, then they have no way of independently looking on their own.
And it's amazing of what these big magazines and newspapers have shown is they can print just about anything, wildly absurd, and people will believe it. It shows you the power of the media, and it shows you how corrupt so many of these media institutions have become over the years. And it's become more and more obvious as alternatives, such as your podcasts, have emerged, and you can hear the truth, and then you can look at these other media outlets with a better eye. And it's no wonder that the trust in the media is at all-time lows and continues to decline. Oh, absolutely. And even, I think you're also seeing trust in podcasts is going up, but which is kind of scary, because a lot of podcasts are also have Soros backed, money. Even a lot of conservative podcasts, if you look behind the scenes, you see there's still hidden hands controlling and crafting certain narratives. And so, people say to me, it's like, I'm truly independent, and to the degree that I'll
question President Trump. If I don't like what Operation Warp Speed did, I'll talk about it. I'm not just going to parrot whatever I think is going to get me in good graces of the current administration. But I think it's important, though, that we have just these open voices and these open discussions.
Amen to that. Absolutely. So thanks for what you're doing.
Absolutely. Well, you too. And so I want to ask you, you are, again, Dallas, it's been amazing seeing how Texas has transformed, because growing up, we always thought Texas was just full of these conservative, God-fearing cowboys. And now, though, I've been out to Houston, I've been to Dallas, and especially when you look at, back when the BLM riots were happening and everything, it's like, I don't even recognize these cities anymore. And so how have you seen Dallas changing, and how have you seen these outside influences coming in and taking over in your understanding? What's it been like fighting on the forefront of that war?
Well, it's something that I think the locals have delayed getting involved in. Everything just kind of ran well without local citizens getting involved. And I think that I know that they're finally waking up and getting involved because of these outside influences. Some of them homegrown, but many of them outside influences. And it seems that cities, American cities, as they get larger, become farther left. And there's reasons for that. And if you want to keep a city that's respects the rule of law, it's a nice place to live, then you've got to get involved and you've got to do something about it. And that means get involved anywhere and everywhere that you can, whether it's the media, whether it's local politics, whether it's state politics, maybe even national politics sometimes, like Trump's recent executive order on homelessness. All these things can affect what's going on locally. And so I've been involved here locally for a number of years. I've gotten very involved here trying to help the city of Dallas specifically do better. We've got a tremendous homelessness problem here. We've got a tremendous crime problem here. And it's just not being addressed with the fervor that it needs to. I was a big supporter of a couple of propositions that were put on the ballot last fall that requires the city to hire more police officers and to raise the pay of police to the top 5 of all local police departments. Well, you would have thought that the whole earth was being burned down with the way the city and all the establishment were opposed to it. And they even convinced, astonishingly, some of the larger business groups to go along with them, because even these business groups have been captured by elements of the city, because the city hands out so much money that they don't want to cross the city. And to these business groups, they've allowed a lot of politicians, former and current, to become members. And so these business groups don't represent business anymore. They're part of the problem, or can be. And so when we were involved in pushing these propositions, I think the city had lined up 19 civic organizations, all opposed to it, and spent untold amounts of money. I understand that the effort was outspent 8-1, but it still passed. And the reason is people are sick of it. And it doesn't matter whether you're on the political left or right. People want basic public safety. It's only the fringe left that wants this foolishness of unsafe streets and homeless people that need our compassion and help, but instead are left to rot on sidewalks. It's terrible. And so it's a matter of pushing back against this fringe and bringing in common sense policies. And it passed. And the city's now required to do the things I mentioned. And their budget's due out here any day now. So we'll see if they actually follow the law and if they'll move in the direction the voters have said that they want it through these propositions. But as you know, government agencies are notorious for just doing what they want. Doesn't matter what the law is. If you or I break the law, we go to jail or we get fined. If government breaks the law, well, they're the government.
Yeah.
And they tried.
They get more funding somehow.
Yeah. It's outrageous how they pass laws for us and they don't even have to follow their own laws or the laws of the state or the federal laws. And that's something that needs to change. One of the propositions, which particularly gall the establishment, is a law that says that anybody can sue the city now to force it to follow its own laws and the state laws. with no ability to collect any monetary damages, just attorney's fees if they're successful. And again, you would have thought that someone was setting the city on fire. The resistance was so bad. It is just amazing of the resistance of the city does not want to have to follow the law. And they made up all kinds of stories about how it'll bankrupt the city. How can it bankrupt the city? Number one, just follow the law. Number two, there's no monetary damages allowed. It's just they made up all kinds of things. Well, it passed as well because it was very logical to everybody that says, well, yeah, of course the city should follow the law. I have to. Why doesn't the city? But it's this kind of arrogance that has taken over a lot of our cities across the country. And they just do what they want because there is a fringe that controls a lot of our cities, funded by Soros and other outsiders and locals that want things the way that they want them, some for naive reasons, some for nefarious reasons. So anyway, homelessness is a problem. I can say that Dallas has made some strides here in the past couple of months to really make a difference. We'll see if it does. I've have some of my own people literally drive through downtown once every 2 weeks to count all the homeless people downtown so we can have reliable numbers on the problem. The city, of course, does not do this.
No.
They have what they call the PIT, the point in time, or once in February. They do this for the whole city. Well, if if 1 year it's raining, well, that of course affects the PIT, or 1 year is particularly cold, and it's only one data point a year. There's nothing you can do with that. But tracking it over time more rapidly, you can track things better and make improvements. And there has been some modest improvement downtown. So I commend the city on what they're doing down there. But it's got a long way to go. And I'm here to help as much as I can. Sometimes it's help that they don't want, but I'm here to help nonetheless.
And so what kind of resistance have you met with? Have you been attacked? And, I guess what's it been like? Because when you stick your neck out for something like this, especially when you're up against, in a lot of ways, an unlimited war chest. I mean, you mentioned Soros, and, it's you can see that Soros has put an excessive amount of money into getting not just like the DAs, the key DAs into power, but politicians, even mayors of small to medium-sized cities. There's been again, almost unlimited funding to fight against this. And so what's it been like for you, which I think I'm glad we're having this conversation, because to me, you represent what I think that everyone should be doing is whatever capacity, whatever ability, whatever resources you have, you got to put some of that skin in the game to fight for what's not for like what's conservative or what's Republicans. I think in a lot of ways they want us to get kind of reinforced with these camps of left versus right. But whereas to me, it's truth is what mattered. And if right now Republicans are aligned with truth, then okay, that's great. But if they stray from that, I'm going to call them out for it and have those discussions. But what has it been like for you putting your neck out and fighting this fight at a local level?
Well, it's what you can imagine. Yes, there's resistance, and the dying legacy media has been saying, nasty things, and the local politicians and even some of these business groups that I mentioned. But, in the end, have you ever seen this meme? That reminds me, someone asked me for it. There's a meme of a guy kind of dressed to me and you, and he's sitting next to, talking to Jesus Christ, and he's explaining his problems. And then you look over at Jesus Christ, and Jesus Christ is as he looked on the cross with thorns, a crown of thorns, with blood and beaten to death and sweat and just grimy. And here's Christ just absolutely in terrible position. Meanwhile, there's someone dressed like me and you, like relatively in good condition and clothed well, explaining the problem. And the irony, of course, is what this guy suffered is on a par so much more than anything that I've possibly suffered, that I hate even mentioning it, because it's nothing compared to what Jesus Christ has suffered. And frankly, others in this country have suffered. I was up at January 6th, and by the grace of God, didn't go into the Capitol, but there are other people that did, and the horror that they've experienced because of going up there. There's no insurrection. It's a joke. No serious person actually believes that anymore. But they experienced real persecution, right? Being put in jail, bankrupted, some of them committing suicide. I mean, it's horrible. So yes, there's been pushback here, but like most dynamics, you push back and especially if you win a couple of times, then the people you push back don't want to fight as much and see if there's some kind of common ground, which is great. I don't want to throw a bomb. I'd rather work with people to get common sense solutions in place. And so I'm definitely seeing more of that. And so I'm hopeful. We'll see if we can't solve some of these problems.
What's also interesting to me is hearing your subscription numbers, because there's a quote, I think it was St. Augustine. It said something to the effect of, "Truth is like a lion. You don't need to protect it. You just set it free, and it'll protect itself." And I really believe in that, and that's why I'm of course I'm flawed, and a lot of times I think I have the truth, and I come to realize, oh, that wasn't the truth, and there's layers upon layers of lies and psychological operations to influence us. But the fact that your media has grown to, what do you say, 270,000 subscribers, and whereas the legacy media is collapsing, I think that's a really good example of that. Because if your goal is just to report the truth, I really believe that truth is universal. I don't believe in objective, morality where, well, it's like, I think to me it's black and white, right? And so I think that as human beings that we inherently have as part of our soul, there's some part of us that will recognize truth. I think a lot of people, they choose to ignore it, or they've believed the lies for so long that they can no longer discern like what is true and what is false anymore. And I think they're in a very precarious situation. But I do believe that a lot of Americans are sincerely seeking the truth, which is why we've seen, especially since COVID, this mass awakening of people, and people saying, wait, I'm not going to wear one of those masks because of this. And I read this study about it. I saw some podcast, and that's not true. I'm not just going to follow blindly. But what has been your experience in terms of that, in terms of being in the media and just fighting just to put the truth out there? Are you seeing that there's been a snowball effect of people just recognizing that, wow, actually there's something different about this publication than the local rag that's being, again, like, look at Soros buying up all the radio stations and everything, and people can sense that. Well, what do you think?
They can. And I got stopped for the first time the other day, and someone says, "Are you Monty Bennett with the Dallas Express?" And, my face is not anywhere. My name's, down at the bottom and all on. And I said, "Well, yes." And this woman says, "I love it. Thanks for, what you're doing. I'm a contributor. We've set it up as a 501c3. And we're starting to get that. Now, my wife, who does a podcast for it, she gets it all the time, because she's a much more approachable person than I am. She's brilliant, and she's beautiful, and on and on. And she has a video, podcast. But people want the truth. And what we try to do in our articles, what's our governing guidelines, that's not always followed, but we try, is as I tell them, look, when you print stories, print stories, from this perspective or that perspective, but always reach out to the other side and let them say whatever they want. This is a digital publication. Words don't cost anything. Whether someone gives me a quote that's, one line long or, 100, it doesn't matter. I said, in the end, I think truth will win. So if you're talking about this mutilation that's been done on our children through this transgender nonsense, well, go and get people on the other side to tell us why gender affirming care is the right words to use to describe it, or anything they want, because in the end, I believe that the truth will prevail. And so get this feedback and put it in the articles. And that's what we try to do. And I said, when they do say the things that they say, don't be cute like the legacy media is, and like our local media has done to me in the past, where they cherry pick this or cherry pick this word to make it look like this. It's so petty, and it's so anti-journalism. And it's just incredible how small-minded these people are. Well, what we try to do is let them put forth their whole argument. Okay, our argument, our articles, 200 more words. So what? Let's let people decide. And that's what we try very much. And I think that's very, very much appreciated, because you can't have an article that doesn't have some point of view, right? Everybody comes from some point of view. That's people. But what you can do is make sure that you get a variety of point of views in that article. And that's what we try to do.
Ladies and gentlemen, our world is being poisoned. Every day we're exposed to more chemicals sprayed into our skies, leaching into our food, and polluting our air and water. From pesticides and heavy metals to hormone disruptors and synthetic additives, these toxins are bombarding our bodies and silently destroying our health. But there's something you can do to fight back, and it starts in your gut. Kimchi One from Brightcore Nutrition contains over 900 strains of beneficial probiotics that will help flush toxins, restore gut balance, and support your immune system. Because when your gut is strong, your body can resist. You'll feel the difference. Better digestion, more energy, clearer thinking, stronger immunity, and even improvements in your skin, hair, and metabolism. And this isn't just hype. Studies show that fermented foods like kimchi can reduce the risk of obesity, improve blood sugar, and support whole body wellness. Kimchi One is all natural, non-GMO, dairy-free, gluten-free, and 100% made in the USA by a company that actually cares about your health. And today, you can get an exclusive offer just for my viewers, 25% off with your code MANINAMERICA by clicking the link below. Or call my friends at Brightcore for up to 50% off your order and free shipping. So give them a call now at 888-575-6488, and their educated staff will make sure that Kimchi One is right for you. Again, that's 888-575-6488. All the links and information are in the description below. And it's so important too, because actually I know that's one of the kind of core principles with the Epoch Times, and they're very strict with their editorial decisions. And it's really, it's a belief that people can make up their own minds. Now, I'm more of a commentator, and I will commonly give my opinion on things. And I try to always say, look, this is my opinion. This is my understanding of the situation based on my current research, and here's my analysis of it. But I think that really as a traditional media like the Epoch Times, or like what you're doing, just give people here's what both sides are saying, and you can figure out what you think is right? Because the truth will prevail. You mentioned your wife's podcast. I'll bring that up really quickly here, which is it's on DallasExpress.com. You click on the podcast button up there. Very professional podcast, by the way. So I encourage people to check this out, especially people that are in Dallas or Texas, because I know she's more focused on local, which is really, really important. And I've actually thought that too. It's like, I wonder if I should ever get into more of a local, kind of type podcasting. I think it's also very important. But one thing I just want to kind of ask as we're rounding out the discussion here is, what advice would you give to someone that is wanting to do more locally? Because I know before we were recording, you talked about how you're, especially post, January 6th and everything, you're looking at the federal level, and especially at that time going up against the Biden DOJ, the Biden, any of these organizations, that it's not even David and Goliath. It's like David is a 2-year-old toddler with, a squirt gun, and Goliath is, an army of tanks. I mean, that's what it's been, going up against that. And so you made a very conscious decision to focus your battles locally, which I think is really important. I think a lot of the kind of say psyop, or a lot of what they're trying to do, is get us to focus on DC, get us to focus on the big picture, or focus on the crisis over around the world, and take away our focus from the areas where we actually can impact change, which is our own communities, our own local areas. And so what advice would you give to people that want to figure out how to make more change happen at the local level?
Get involved. There's so many ways to get involved. Run for city council, run for the local school board. And if you don't want to do that, then go find a candidate that you like and has your values, and support them. They all need, look, what we all have is our time and our money, and everybody's got some of each. And you can help a certain candidate to win, and then help that candidate survive the onslaughts, because you can't go into the lion's den without starting to be pulled in the lion's direction, and to help them keep their true north. There's so many ways to do that. Get on a local commission of some sort, but serve in some way, and then bring others with you. Bring your church, bring others. The church has run from the public square because the church started to buy into, as I did, we need separation of church and state, and we don't need to bring our views. No, nonsense. We need to bring our views into the government, into every part of our lives and every part of our country, because we've seen what's happened when we don't. And this amoral secularism is destroying our country, and we need to be involved. So those are just a few simple ways that will keep them busy for the rest of their lives if they're so interested.
That's a good point. So as we're wrapping up, do you have any closing thoughts for us?
Homelessness is something that I'm really focused on. We're working on some efforts here. But what I think is important is I was talking to someone one day and they said, yes, Monty, glad you're trying to, address these complex problems. And I said, they're not complex. They're not complex at all. They may be hard to implement the solutions, but they're not complex. The issue is getting around the resistance. If you want a much better city, in Dallas, for example, take the number of police officers from 3,200 to 4,000, and that will substantially improve crime for all citizens, especially our friends in the Black and brown communities. They're the ones that suffer through most of the crime. We'll have all kinds of growth downtown. You'll have increase in property values. You'll have more revenue for the city to do more kinds of things. It's not complicated. It's just a few tough decisions. Helping the homelessness, you just need an organized effort and push back. There are organizations that do great work. There are organizations that exist because of the homelessness, and if it's solved, they go out of business, and no one wants to use their job. There's a lot of players that don't want to solve the problem. Look at the homeless. Homeless people are almost exclusively Black and white men. They're not women, by and large, and they're not Asians and not Hispanics. Well, that tells you on its face that it's largely a cultural type problem, and the fact that women have terrible consequences from being on the streets potentially, while men don't. So these people need help. Many of them absolutely need help in different kinds of regards. But also we have to get away from a culture of saying somehow it's okay. It's not okay. You need to take care of yourself. You need to take care of your family, and we're going to help you do it, whether you want the help or not, because that's part of a responsible society. So I guess what I'd like to close out with is these problems aren't that hard. They just aren't that complex. They just need some people pushing, and they can be solved. This is not Elon Musk sending people to Mars. This is something a lot simpler.
It's a good point. And one thing I'll say with that too is I think that one thing that the bloated federal government has done is it's taken a lot of people and it's turned them into people that are just waiting for the big government to come save them, right? Whereas even a lot of the welfare services in the past, those were run by private companies or private charities or just local organizations taking care of their own community. And I think that's there's I love the saying that the bigger the government, the smaller the God. The bigger the God, the smaller the government. And I think that's what we need is more people figuring out on a local level without trying to bring in the federal government or federal funding or any of these things, how can they enact change? I think that you've been a strong example of that. So Monty, thank you for giving me your time. I know you're very busy and I appreciate the time that you've given us, and thank you for doing what you're doing. And I think also being an example for people. You're not some celebrity or some influencer or some politician. You're just a guy that cares about his community, and you have put your own money and your own time and your own reputation on the line to try to improve the areas that you can. I think it's a great example for us, whether you're in a city like Dallas or whether you live in a 500-person town. It doesn't matter, because we can all impact change in our environment around us. I think that's such an important message for people.
Yes. Well, thank you. Very kind of you. And thank you for what you're doing and amplifying the role of media and letting people hear and understand that there are different points of view besides the garbage that we get from this legacy media, because it's just horrible. So thank you very much. And
absolutely. Thank you. Take care and God bless. You probably think your 401k is safe, that it's growing, that it'll be enough for your retirement. But what if it's not? Here's the truth most people never hear. Your 401k was never designed to make you wealthy. It was created in a corporate boardroom to shift retirement costs and investment risk onto you. Designed to keep your money trapped, exposed to Wall Street crashes, inflation, and uncertainty you can't control. Until now. Right now, Americans are taking back control by turning to real assets like gold and silver. Noble Gold Investments has helped thousands protect their future by converting part of their retirement savings into physical gold and silver so they can stop worrying about the market and start sleeping better at night. So talk to Noble Gold today and learn how safe and easy it is to roll over your 401k into a tax-advantaged precious metals IRA without penalties or headaches. Visit goldwithseth.com or call 626-654-1906 to get your free wealth protection kit, including a step-by-step guide to get started. It's time to get your money out of the danger zone and into something real. Again, that's 626-654-1906 or goldwithseth.com.